You're listening to the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast, episode 149. Welcome to the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast. I'm your host, Paula Price, lawyer turned certified executive coach. This podcast was created to empower women lawyers just like you to create a life and practice you love. Join me every week for a break from the hustle so we can focus on you, what you truly want, and how you can create it. If you're over the overwhelm, done with putting out fires, and ready to redefine success on your own terms, you're in the right place. Ready for today's episode? Let's dive in. Hello, my dear friend. Welcome back to the podcast, and thank you for joining me here this week. I am delighted to share with you an interview with Aman Costigan. If Aman is new to you, she is a lawyer and entrepreneur who lives in Edmonton, Alberta with her husband and son, and Aman will be speaking with us today about investing in yourself and why it matters. Now, as you listen to today's episode, I would invite you to consider the investments that you've made in yourself, the ones that have really had an impact. And I would invite you to also think about investments that you would love to make in yourself and maybe you're on the fence about. And if there is a key takeaway for you, I would love for that to be that the investments that you are drawn to may have a real impact on you and on your life. And I would encourage you to give yourself the permission that you need to go ahead and make the investments that you truly desire. Now, with that, I'm going to turn us over to the interview. I hope that you enjoy it as much as we loved recording it. Here it is. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. It's Paula here, and I'm thrilled to be introducing you to this week's guest. Her name is Aman Costigan. She is a lawyer in Edmonton, Alberta, so a fellow Canadian. She is a multi-faceted lawyer. She is a partner at a law firm in Edmonton. She's also a yoga and mindfulness teacher for lawyers. On top of that, she also runs a life design couples workshop with her husband, and she also runs the vision board workshop for lawyers. And that is one of the ways that I got to know Aman earlier this year. Well, actually, I guess late last year, I attended and participated in her vision board workshop. It was so much fun, and I'm thrilled to be able to introduce her to you. So, Aman, welcome to today's podcast.
Thank you, Paula. I'm so excited to be here.
Amazing. Aman, I would love for you to share a little bit about yourself before we dive into today's topic, which is all about investing in yourself. So please tell us more about you.
Sure. So all the things that you listed, I haven't always been that way. So I want to make sure that that's clear. I've really been on a journey. So I've been practicing now for 12 years. And the first, I would say 5 to 6 years, and even in law school, I really had let go of a lot of my hobbies and was really just focused on learning all that I could. I was grinding, I was hustling, which I was rewarded with in terms of partnership. So I became a partner in 2018. And then once I had kind of come to the place of like checking all of the boxes, so go to law school, check, get an articling, check, work and learn as much as I can, have a broad experience, hone my legal skills, became a partner, check. It came to a point where I was like, okay, now what? Now what are we chasing after? And there was nothing that I had that I knew of that was next. And so it really just was a moment for me to look around in my life and be like, okay, now what? And it was really at that point where I started just getting intentional about what I wanted to do with my life, what I wanted my days to look like, what I wanted people in my life and who I wanted to surround myself with, that I didn't want to live for vacations anymore. There was just a lot of changes that I wanted to make in my life. And it sort of just came all to a head at that moment. And I just started making changes. And it really started with investing in myself.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Aman. And you've really introduced the topic beautifully, which is this idea of investing in yourself. And when I reached out to you a few weeks ago, because I knew I really wanted to invite you onto the podcast, I had heard you speak on other podcasts. Like I mentioned earlier, I was in your vision board workshop, and you have such an interesting and dynamic approach to your career and to your life. And the topic that you had suggested was investing in yourself. And that was something that was on my mind as well. So thrilled to have you here to talk about that. And I'd love to hear from you. And I know our listeners would love to hear from you why it's an important topic, why we should talk about investing in yourself.
Yeah. So I think for me, it's at least now. So now that I've been doing it for about 5 years, investing in myself in various different ways, it's something that people are always curious about, surprised by, and want to know more about. And that's just kind of opened my mind to wait, other people aren't doing this. And I really do think when I take myself back to, the more junior lawyer that I was, I didn't know that there was this whole other world of you can invest in yourself outside of CLEs and, what we continue to do after law school. You can do things beyond that. And there are things out there. You just have to find them. And I think in our circles, or at least for me, I didn't have people in my life, work or personal or friend group, who were doing things like this. And so I want to expand people's awareness and possibility around what's out there for investing in yourself, and that it is something that I would encourage people to do.
Beautiful. And I love that, the investing in yourself is so much about the relationship with yourself. And, as you were talking, it made me think about law school, right? Which I think is an investment that you and I have both made. And most of my listeners, our listeners, I assume, have made that investment or a similar one, right? An investment in education where you knew or anticipated going into it that this is a professional designation, it's sensible, it's going to lead to a career in law, a law degree, et cetera. And so that type of investment, I think we're really comfortable with. And some of the other types of investments, like the continuing education, which I think is amazing for all lawyers to be able to have access to that type of support. All of those are really, they're wonderful investments, but it's almost like then there's this other type of investment, right? For me, I think about the coach training that I did when I was transitioning out of law and how it felt like such a luxury. And should I really be making this investment? Who am I to, go and get that extra certification and spend that money and that time, et cetera? And so it really does boil down to the relationship you have with yourself and almost giving yourself the gift of investing in something that you really truly desire and that is going to shape your life in a way that you might not be able to predict it right now, right? You might not be able to say it's going to give me a law degree and then I'll be a lawyer. It's something a little bit more amorphous than that, right? It's harder to define. So I love what you said about, the chicken with the head cut off. I mean, I think all of us start out that way. It's like a rite of passage. And then you started to invest in yourself. So what was it that led you to make that decision?
Yeah. So I think I've always had a passion for goal setting. I had a vision board, for the LSAT. So I would drive around in my car with a 162 LSAT score in my car. And I had a vision board in my room about, the different universities and things like that and where I was headed in 5 years. So I had a vision. I really enjoyed these like personal development, professional development. I really enjoyed all that kind of stuff. And I think it just got drowned out in law school because I studied a lot. And then my first 5 years, 6 years of practice, I was really just working hard and I had let go of some of these things. And so it was really at that point when I became partner that I had checked all the boxes that I thought, okay, now what? And so then in late 2018, I think it was, and early 2019, I started to pick back up my love of personal and professional development. So I started checking all of the things I was doing. What are the podcasts out there that talk about personal development for lawyers specifically? What are the books out there? I started searching for this thing that was out there called masterminds. I was like, what is a mastermind? And I started really diving deep into the financial independence community as well. That was another interest of mine at the same time because I had just paid off my student loans. I had also, in articling, bought a Mercedes because, hey, that's what you do when you become a lawyer. Lifestyle creep is real. So I had finally paid all that stuff off. And then I was like, okay, now what? And so it was really just bringing these things back into my life and working hard on doing that and giving myself the space and time to explore.
Amazing. And what have been some of your best investments?
Yeah, so I thought about this. I think over the last 5 years that I've been investing in myself, I've invested, and I'm just sharing this as information, not because of a specific thing, but I've invested over $100,000 in myself, which is crazy for me to think on because law school I thought was a lot of money at the time. And so I've done this because it's allowed me to continue to up level and grow and change my mindset and surround myself with different people. So my like top 3 investments, I would have to say, my first one is my yoga class that I've been going to for the last 12 years on Monday nights for 2 hours. My second one would be the mastermind that I joined with other entrepreneurial lawyers. That one really opened my mind up to there being lawyers in the world who were lawyers and then whether that was moms, podcasts, they had their side businesses that they were doing. It really just gave me an example of possibility. And it also gave me connection to people that somehow, I still don't know how to explain it. But when I started teaching yoga to lawyers back during the pandemic, I literally started the business in January of 2021. I ran my first program in March of 2021, and I had 18 lawyers sign up for that course with me. And that would not have been possible if I hadn't joined that mastermind, made the connections, and had everybody share the way that they did with their networks online. And then the third one I would say is the couples program that my husband and I did, which is now the program that my husband and I will be teaching. And we did it in January of 2020. And it was essentially to align ourselves as a couple and to work on designing a life intentionally and by design. And so that has now become something that we're teaching to other couples.
I love this. And these are such clear examples, and they're so different too, right? Like the idea of the yoga class, I mean, that is brilliant and so doable, right? For all of us who are struggling to incorporate a little bit more balance into our lives, that is an investment. Like giving yourself that time and that space to actually take care of your physical self is key. I love this idea of the mastermind, right? Putting yourself in a room full of other like-minded lawyers, people who are interested in the lawyer and, as you describe it, amazing, right? Who then turned into a network for you, who, when you are pursuing the and, right, that they're able to support you and share ideas and share the ideas that you're sharing with their communities. And what you've described with your husband, I heard you mention this in a podcast that you'd recorded. I'm forgetting who it was that was interviewing you. And I like stopped in my tracks. I'm like, that is the coolest thing, to go with your partner and actually think about your life, like take a step back and design your goals together is amazing. So just all these different ways of learning and then bringing that back into your life in a tangible way. So beautiful, beautiful examples. I would love to know for you what impact having those experiences, making those investments has had on you and the rest of your life.
Yeah, I would say so. The yoga class, I really do think so. My yoga is not just yoga for 2 hours, it's different than that. There's chanting, there's toning, my teacher pulls out the human anatomy and we look at where all the breathing muscles are in the body. So there's like learning, there's philosophy, there's breath work. It's all the things. So it's quite involved and different than other typical yoga classes. So I would say that has allowed me to stay in private practice for 12 years because I've been able to manage my stress and the way I show up and that kind of reactiveness that we bring and the anger that I had for, I would say, many of the early years of my practice and my life, the anger that I had and the frustration and the stress, that's really helped me manage that. And I think love myself is the other like big piece to that just 2 hours a week without your phone, you have to be here and this is what we're going to do. And we're going to go inward, even though it's so uncomfortable and nobody wants to do it, or very few people, really want to sit down and do that. And then I would also say it expanded my brain, like the masterminds and meeting other people from around the world who are doing different things. And that expanded me to possibility on it being possible to be a lawyer and these other things. And it's okay to have other interests. Like for me, that was something I struggled with. I thought something was wrong with me because I wanted to be a lawyer and have a practice, but I also wanted these other things. I also had these other interests. And that in my kind of world that I had at the time, I thought that there was something wrong with me because, I had this other desire and I really criticized myself for that. And so really just kind of coming to the conclusion that there's nothing wrong with me wanting, the and wanting to be other things.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I think that point about the yoga and having that be something that allows you to stay in practice and allows you to thrive and allows you to maintain a certain level of composure. I imagine, again, going back to the chicken and the head cut off, I mean, that's how we all feel, right? And until we learn the skills to actually manage our emotions, manage the stress, to take a step back and kind of be able to see things from a different perspective, it can be really tough. And it's not something that we learn in law school, right? Learning how to manage and deal with the actual practice of law isn't one of the skills that we're taught. And yet it's one of those things that can really enhance your enjoyment of your practice, your ability to practice, your ability to focus. So amazing. I would love to know because I mean, I've invested in a number of different programs and some of them have been incredible. Others, a little bit more challenging to really extract the value. And so I'd love to hear from you when you're going into an investment, whether it's the yoga, whether it's a mastermind, how do you make sure that you get the greatest return on your investment?
Yeah. So one of the things I exercise is constraint. So I constrain myself on what and when I'm going to invest in myself. So whether that's online courses, if I'm going to attend a spiritual retreat in Tulum, which I did, whether it's a mastermind, a business coaching, a podcast that I'm going to either be on or listen to, networking events I'm going to attend, I exercise constraint throughout. So I actually brought to show you, I know we're on video, but like I have a year out like calendar that I actually like highlight programs I've signed up for. And it shows me like, hey, January, February looks pretty packed with some of the things like that I've signed up for. So if I ever get something that comes up and I'm like, oh, I'm just going to sign up for that. I'm like, oh, wait, I should just check. Because if I don't have the capacity, the time to sit down and do it, then like, why am I signing up right now? And the other thing I always ask myself is, I'm not a go watch the recording kind of person. So I need to be showing up live. So it's great that there's a recording and, like less than 10% of the time have I ever actually gone back and watched the recording. So for me, knowing my habits and the way I show up, it's important for me to be able to show up at that time and that day. So I look into the details, when is this, for example, workshop, when is it going to be? Can I actually attend? So to me, constraint is really important. The other thing is being strategic and thoughtful in how and when I invest, which I think that goes hand in hand with looking at my calendar and what it's going to be, but also what's going on in my life, right? Like I'm looking at the full picture. I'm not just looking at work. I'm not just looking at life. I'm looking at everything together and what's going on. And then I make sure that I have the time and the space to do the work. So it's one thing to just attend the workshop, whether it's an hour or something like that, but it's another thing to actually do the work that you were taught in the workshop. Because if you're just consuming, then you're not actually doing anything. In my mind, you're consuming and that's great. You learned something. But like, if you're not actually implementing it, then you're not going to see results. And if it's massive action you're looking for, or massive change, you're not going to get that if you're not actually doing the work.
Okay. So amazing. Our listeners do not have the benefit of having seen your calendar, but I will just say it was like the year. So all the months and all the numbers of the days of the months. And you can see there's some red circles on it, some blue notes on it. I do the same thing for certain speaking things and just trying to figure out what's going on. And having a visual is such a great tool for those of us who want to put a lot on our calendars and need a little bit of restraint, a little bit of a reminder that, wait a minute, you've already committed to all these things. So I think that's brilliant. The other thing that I think is really neat that you mentioned is your learning style. So you mentioned that you will never listen to a recording. I'm the opposite. I will almost never attend a live session, but I will listen to every single recording. And so it's just the way, because I can listen to them on my own time when I'm going for a walk, I'm folding laundry, whatever. So really interesting for everybody to know their own consumption practices. How are they best going to benefit from a particular type of program? So I think that's brilliant. And the other thing I'd love to dig a little bit deeper on, because it's so true, the implementation, right? And I'm struggling right now in a program that I signed up for where I can digest the content, but the way it's presented right now, I'm struggling to implement. So what tips do you have for crossing over that threshold, right? Where you want to implement, but I mean, how do you set it up for yourself so that that becomes a part of the process?
Yeah, so I've tried different things. So for me, if I'm watching a video and it has action tips in it, but there's no like list, or like the person's just talking and sharing like, do this and do that, and I would do this, and here's what I've done. I actually write down a list. Like I actually make a physical list of like, oh, these are the things they're telling me to go do. Make a vision board on Pinterest or a mood board on Pinterest. Okay. Then you have to take that mood board and you need to do these things with it. For example, I'm in a branding course right now. So this is kind of a little bit of the branding or like the outfit work, but there's no like list in doing it. You have to basically listen and come up with the list yourself. Nobody's handing you like the grocery list of these are the things you have to do. So for me, I create my own little list as I'm listening. So rather than moving to the next video and just consuming again, I actually make myself make that list before I allow myself to play the next video. Because if I don't, then either I won't know what I was supposed to do, or I'll only do one of the 10 things that was mentioned, or I'll completely forget, or I'll say, oh, I have to go back and watch it again. Well, if it was a 45-minute video, then, what are the chances of me going back and actually doing and implementing the things that were mentioned in the video? And sometimes I miss things. So if I'm just going based on my memory. So for me, I'm a pen to paper kind of girl. So I write things down and say, in this video, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I'm not going to move on to the next section until I've done, 90% of those things on that list.
Amazing. And the analogy that I love to use is the gym, right? I think a lot of these investments, these programs, they're tools, right? I mean, law school is like that. Everybody goes to law school and gets the same degree, but you'll see just looking around those who graduate in your cohort, in your year, everybody's doing something different. And, if you go to the gym and you use a certain set of machines, then you're going to get a particular result. If you use a different set, you'll use a different result. And it's your application of the tools. It's you actually using the tools that creates the results in your life. It's not necessarily the program itself. It's there to support you. It's there to guide you. It's there to provide resources. But the onus ultimately is on you to create the results that you're looking for. So here's a question. What if you you're in a program, and let's say you're doing what you can, you're using your usual strategies, and you find it isn't working. What recommendations do you have to turn things around?
I think I would just recommend doing a reevaluation or an evaluation of yourself and the program. That would be my first place that I would look and see, is there some benefit that you can, is there something that you're doing in your habits or with the course that you're not fully engaging, you're not making the time to actually do the work. Is there something like that that's going on? Do you need to give yourself a little bit more time? Maybe the plan that you've come up with is not a workable or a doable plan. And so you're actually just not doing any of it, or something like that. So I would really just do a self-examination and see what's going on. And if that's not giving me what, I'm doing what I think I should be doing, then I guess the next thing I would kind of look at is, do you reach out to the person who created the course and say, I'm doing these things, but I'm finding this, do you have any tips that I could implement that would help me to get over this or the other thing? And then if that still doesn't work, I guess the next thing I would just say is that really, I think investments like this in ourselves are a way of self-exploration. And, what is it that you can learn from this thing, even if it's not what you originally thought going in? What is it that you can learn?
Yeah, I love that. And I've asked myself those types of questions when I've made investments in different programs, in particular at the outset, what is it that I'm hoping to achieve? What is the result that I'm expecting for myself by signing up for this program? And I think continuing to ask yourself that question throughout the program. And sometimes what I have found is something that I thought that I wanted became something that I actually didn't want. Once I started to dig into what it was, I thought, you know what, this approach that I thought was going to be so useful for me actually isn't delivering to me the kind of result that I was hoping for. And so that might be what you mean, right? It's not so much that, you get that thing that is the result. That's not the lesson you're necessarily taking from it. Sometimes it's quite different. And if I think about some of the programs that I've been in, sometimes the lesson really is, I was looking for so-and-so to tell me what to do, when in fact, I'm the one who's best positioned to figure out how to do this. So it can be really interesting to see how these investments ultimately unfold. And the other thing that came to mind as you were talking is your intake process. I think in particular with the constraint, it's very robust, right? I think that's going to reduce the risk that you're going to enter into a program that's not going to work out for you. But sometimes at the intake, you want to make sure that you're signing up for something for the right reasons. Because I know sometimes if I've entered into something because it's a Black Friday sale and you should buy it now. And so I'm yeah, I should buy it now. And then I get in there, I'm well, why did I do that? So just making sure that it's aligned, right? The reason that you're doing it is aligned, and it's going to be sustainable for you to keep your energy up throughout the program. This leads us to our next question, because the programs will have some limits, right? Sometimes you'll go into an investment and you'll have this idea of what you're really looking for. And maybe you're hoping for that investment to, the program will teach you something, or the person will inspire you to do something, or, what have you. What do you see as being some of the limits that these types of investments might have?
I think some of the limits for me, at least, have been that the results that I get are based on me showing up. Like if it's a live event, it's based on me showing up and doing the work. I really do think it's that simple. Like if I'm not doing the work, I'm not going to see the results. So I can buy all of the courses. And like you said, the Black Friday things, right? They're very enticing and there's sales, right? And so I have been sucked into that too. And I've seen when I don't do the work, then I don't get the results that I was looking for.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's, if we're putting it into one of the examples that you shared with us. So I'm taking the couples one because I'm so fascinated by that type of investment. So you, I imagine, go to it sounds like it was a place that you went to, or it was some sort of a workshop that you and your husband did together. So you put together the plan. I mean, they can host, right? And they can offer the prompts, but ultimately you're the ones who are answering the questions. You're the ones who are coming up with the ideas. And I mean, I find this in coaching conversations that I have with clients, right? Like sometimes even just investing that time for themselves, where they're going to sit down and spend an hour talking about something that's important to them, but that they don't have time for in their day-to-day life. Sometimes that's the value that they're creating within that container, and then leading to that next stage, which is implementing, right? Like having that be something that creates a difference in their day-to-day. My next question for you, what do you think prevents people, right, from investing in themselves? So whether it's in a yoga retreat, for example, or in some sort of personal development, I see this with coaching clients. Like there are lawyers who will come to me and they have something that's really on their mind, right? Whether it's the job that they're in, or it's the way that they're practicing, or they're really struggling with their confidence levels. And I know that they're interested, right? I know that they want some support, but they shy away from it. And you mentioned, right, that there were years that you went through practice where it wasn't really even on your radar. So what is it that you think prevents women in particular from investing in themselves?
Yes, if I take myself back to the old me and I try to think like, what was she thinking? What was going on? I think some of the like obvious ones are like, I don't have time. I'm too busy. It's not the right time. I'll do it later on. And I would really question that one. I'm not saying you should do it right away, but I think that that one can trick us. I would say there's thoughts around spending money on ourselves and our minds. And I don't think that we see it normally in our worlds that we're in. We see ourselves and we're taught to put others before ourselves. And we are generally last on the to-do list. Generally, there is nothing on this calendar for the week that's scheduled for ourselves. And I think that that's what we've seen. That's what's around us. And if you don't know any different, that's really what you just see is what you do. And I also think sometimes there's a factor of like being too tired, being exhausted at the end of the day. Like, when are you supposed to put this in there? Or how is that actually going to happen? And then I also think there's a component of figuring it out on our own, because we're high achieving, driven, smart women. Like, we should be able to figure this out on our own. And then I also think there's a little bit of this component of like, when you ask for support, that means you mean less, or like you're not good enough. And so I think that there's a real struggle there in terms of like asking for help, or like joining something like that is an issue identification of something in your life, whereas it's like totally not. So those are just some of the quick things when I bring myself back to the old me, what's going on.
Yeah, I think these are reasons that really resonate on so many levels, right? The first one that you mentioned is time, right? And I think for so many of us, we are not giving ourselves the time that we need to invest in ourselves. And whether it's a mastermind, or frankly, giving yourself 30 minutes to walk around the block at the end of the day, it's like you need to give yourself that time. Money, right? Are you spending on yourself versus, especially once you start having a family and you start thinking about, well, this is $1 I'm spending on me versus what about daycare? What about clothes for the kids? What about food for the kids? Whatever. So again, and that ties into like this idea of not putting yourself first versus putting yourself first. And I think that's one of the really powerful things about investing in yourself in whatever capacity, right? Is that you are kind of planting a flag in a sense, like you're staking out territory for yourself. You're investing. And by doing that, you're now actually prioritizing yourself. And so it can be a really powerful shift. I get it. You're tired. People don't always have the energy. That makes perfect sense. Again, if that's a concern, to think about how the program could potentially help you get back some energy. And if it's not doable, when would it be doable, right? Like giving yourself a goal to work towards so that you can make space if it's something that's really important to you. And then I think this last thing that you mentioned as well, right? This idea of not wanting to do it on your own or not wanting to be seen as incapable of doing it on your own, right? This is so prevalent among high achievers and it can be a real barrier. And one of the things that I've noticed is as a trend in the legal profession, particularly since the pandemic era when everybody was online and everybody was talking about mental health, is that there's so much value in reaching out and seeking support, whether it's seeking out the support of a counselor, whether it's something in the nature of a program. I think we need to take that stigma of, I need help, therefore there's something wrong with me, and look at it differently. I need help and I'm getting the help I need. And that is empowering. That is something to be celebrated. I think there's a real shift that I would like to see in terms of people feeling like they can go and get that support, that that's not a sign of weakness. If anything, it's a sign that they're putting themselves first or, close to first and taking care of themselves. I love that. Thank you so much. Which leads to another question. And we've kind of touched on this, but these being some of the reasons why people may not invest in themselves, how might that reluctance show up other places in your life?
Yeah. So again, going back to the old me, and don't get me wrong, it still shows up in the new me. It is happening this week. It's happening like today.
Yeah.
But I think like it's, you're not showing up or following through on your commitments that you've made to yourself. And so I think that it's like as easy as a walk around the block, a workout that you had planned to do. You're saying yes to other people when you said yes to yourself. And so you'll just take the thing that you said yes to yourself about, if you did even, and you'll just say yes to other people. Yes, I can do that. And we just start knocking ourselves down the list. You're not meditating, for the 5 or 10 minutes that you said that you would. And you just focus on getting caught up on work, although you're never going to get caught up. So I just think it's like years will pass and you'll continue to be in that cycle and you'll have either done very minimal or nothing for your mental and your physical health. And I think what ends up happening, at least from my observations, is that like you forget what's fun anymore and what feels good and fun, and that kind of ripple effect of excitement and fun and joy in life is no longer rippling out of you to others in your life.
Yeah. And I think it's so profound. And as you're talking about it, I'm thinking about that, right? In terms of how when we are able to follow through on the commitments that we make to ourselves, when we are able to allow ourselves to, say no, right? If we need to have boundaries, to treat ourselves the way that we treat others, right? To at least put ourselves on equal footing, it does make such a difference. And so, it's an invitation, I think, for all of us to really think about what we can do, right? Whether it's something that is in our day to day, right? That extra time just to phone a friend or to, watch our favorite TV show or whatever it is, those little, we can call them indulgences, but ultimately it's the little pockets of joy that make up your life. And it's so easy, especially when we're busy, right? Especially, work is busy. And as you said, it's always going to be busy. And, the kids need you and your parents need you and your friends need you. And, there's a lot of different areas that they're all going to come to you and they're all going to ask you to help them. And we need to find a way to take care of ourselves and give equal weight to the commitments we've made to ourselves relative to the commitments that we're making to others. So beautiful. I just love that. Which leads me to my next question, Aman. I'm very curious to know what is next for you in terms of what investments you're making in yourself.
Okay, so I want to do all the things all at the same time. That's my tendency.
Don't we all? Yes. Good for you for constraining. I still am struggling with constraint, but go on.
and then my husband, he's not always on board or understands the financial commitments that come with some of these things. And so he's not, when he sees the price tag on some things, he always really does question me in it, even though he's seen the results over the 5 years. So it's just such a fascinating thing because clearly it relates to thoughts around money and all that kind of stuff. And so he's come around, we have a discussion about it, and, I end up doing it. But for me, the next thing that I have on my list is a business mastermind. That's the next thing I want to join. But there's a threshold requirement to make a certain income in order to join that business mastermind. And because the life strategist for couples role that I'll be stepping into next is new, I don't have an income on that. So that's my next one that I want to do. And then I have this creative pull that I'm feeling really called to, So I've been looking in Edmonton for crafting classes. So I just went to a fabric marbling class. I'm also my growing up, I was a dancer. So I also go to an adult drop-in. So whether it's hip hop, contemporary, lyrical, I just drop in for those classes as something that kind of nourishes my soul. Pottery is probably another thing I'm looking at, but I'm really looking for different sorts of crafting activities. And I'm also looking to go back to Tulum. I went to Tulum last May when my son was 10 months old for 6 days. And it was a women's spiritual retreat. And it was working through all of our stuff, our emotions, and moving all the stuff in the body. And I loved it. And so I'd love to go back again and do that with Chelsea at Radiate Retreat. So those are some of the things. It's kind of all different facets of things, not just personal development, not just professional development, but kind of a whole thing of it.
I love that. It's such a great collection of exciting investments. And I have a question for you about this. It relates to a theory about time management. And as you're talking about all these different things, like the pottery and the crafting and all of it, and Tulum, I'm imagining, how do you make the time for it? How do you get your work done and have all these hobbies, right? So, but I also believe that when we start putting these things into our calendar, when we start making these commitments, then we find a way to get the work done when we are not in Tulum, when we're not at the crafting. So as a time management component to it, how do you make that work?
Okay, so I've done full podcast episodes on time management, like that are like 45 minutes long. So just to give you some of the top of like the quick examples is I do things, I have a supportive husband. That's huge. He helps me out. Like that's how I go to Tulum for 6 days. We go through different seasons of our life where we will hire a personal concierge, for example. They're $60 an hour. When we went to Amsterdam for 6 weeks and Portugal with our son when he was 3 months old, when we came back, we asked her if she could have a meal ready for us, buy our Christmas tree because we were coming back around Christmas time, make the beds because like no sheets have been on for the time, and she could minimally stock our fridge. So those are some of the things that we do to not have to do it ourselves. We have someone who comes in and cleans the house so that I buying back some of my time so I can focus on things that I want to focus on. It also means sometimes that their dishes stay in the sink and they don't get washed. And I have to like deal with that discomfort of not having put away the dishes and cleaned up the countertops because instead I'm going to go edit this video for the Life Strategist for Couples program that I'm putting up online. Sometimes I have to make those choices and I have to live with the discomfort and experience that discomfort. But I am very calendar driven. I have a month calendar. I have a week calendar. I plan with another 2 lawyers every Friday. We've been planning for almost 3 years together. We just plan for 1 hour together. And it's crazy the amount of focus and the amount we get done. And we do hard things during that 1 hour. So I like build in networks of support into my life as well and really live and die by my calendar and do things that I can buy back my time with. We even did a meal delivery service for about 8 months, I want to say. Someone brought 5 meals a week and they were healthy meals pre-done. We didn't have to do dishes and you didn't have to like meal plan or grocery shop, really, like you did, but not really. So we just bring in different things and we try different things in different seasons of our life and what we're trying to do.
Love it. Love it. I think everybody needs to hear these messages and to the extent they can, absolutely do these things, right? I'm a huge advocate of all the planning, the calendaring, making sure that you use your calendar in the way that supports your life, right? Like the things that you want to have in your life and to get other people involved to help you, right, is huge because, and I've had many discussions about this as a mom, especially, right? There's a lot that we feel falls onto our shoulders, a lot of expectations in terms of things being a certain way around the house and just being able to delegate out, portions of that, big and small, depending on the seasons that you're in, to free up your time to do these other things. Again, along the lines of investing in yourself, right? I think that's a huge investment that we should be really thinking about, if not making, right? Who are we investing in to help us so that we can do the things that we want to do? So brilliant. I would love to know for all of our listeners, what parting words you might have for anybody who is thinking about commitments that they can make for themselves, investments they can make, and maybe are struggling to go ahead with that. What words would you share with them?
I think I would just share that it's your responsibility to invest in yourself. And when you do, you benefit, and everyone in your life benefits from it too, work and personal. So my question, like, why wouldn't you take the chance and invest in yourself? I really don't think that you have anything to lose.
Beautiful. I love it. And Aman, where can we find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I know you're going to link it, right?
Yes, all of the links will be in the show notes.
Okay. I hang out a lot on Instagram in my stories, but I'm also on LinkedIn and also at my website, amancostigan.com, which is where the new life strategist for couples is evolving, the course, and also one-on-one sessions with me and my husband to help couples goal set, strategize, take action, all the things that a lot of us don't want to look at and do on our own.
Amazing. I love it. Aman, thank you. Thank you. Well, and that would be, looking at investing in yourself, also investing in your relationship and your life, right? Like it's just such a powerful thing to do, right? To sit down and to think about what you want for your future, what you and your partner want for your life together. It's brilliant. So thank you again, Aman, for coming on today. And thank you everybody for joining us today. I think it's been such an eye-opening discussion and such a wonderful topic for all of us to think about, right? Where are we choosing to invest in ourselves? Where are we not choosing to invest in ourselves? And, what could be different for us? So thank you so much for joining. It's been wonderful having this conversation with you.
You're so, so welcome. And thanks for having me on. This was so fun.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. If you enjoyed today's show and don't want to miss an episode, subscribe and follow the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you haven't already, please leave a rating and review. Your feedback will help me create a podcast that's tailored to your needs and goes straight to the heart of what matters to you. For instructions on how to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast, visit www.thejoyfulpractice.com/podcast launch. See you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast. If you want more information, visit www.thejoyfulpractice.com. See you next week.